Hey everyone who is stuck at home right now. Today, what you missed was genetics and Punnett squares. So, I will be walking you through what we need to do to create Punnett squares, which is all about our genetic makeup and all of our physical traits and things like that. It's pretty cool. Before we do that, I want to go back a little ways and talk about chromosomes. A few weeks ago, we started learning about the different types of cell organelles. And one of the cell organelles was the nucleus. It was that big purple ball in the cell, which is actually really small, but it looked like a big purple ball in the cell. And it controlled all of the cell's activity. We referred to it as like the mayor or the city hall because it controls all of the cell's activities. And inside the nucleus is all of our DNA and our chromosomes. So, one thing, let me draw this really quick. Quick little drawing of a chromosome. So we have hundreds of these in our nucleus. It's what makes our DNA and it's what makes us us. Inside our chromosomes, we have all of these different traits that are in these random spots. And these are the traits that we're able to figure out why we have these physical traits. So some of these traits could be like our eye color. One of these traits could be our height, why we have, why we're tall, why we're short. Another one of these could be our hair color. And another one could be our hair type. One of them could be maybe why our teeth are straight or why we might have needed braces because our teeth weren't that perfect right away. All of these things are in our chromosomes. And when we create Punnett squares later, we're able to figure out the percent chance that we will inherit a certain type of eye color based on what our parents had, or curly hair or straight hair, depending on what our genes are, our alleles, or our genotypes. So, I am going to go over the notes that we went through in class before I show you how to create Punnett squares. So, if you want to follow along as I'm saying it, in our folder for this week, I don't know if you can see it that well with the glare, but on the bottom of our folder for this week, it says Chapter 3 Punnett Square Notes. That is what I am going to go over right now. After that, you'll see the SpongeBob genetic assignment, which is what we started today, and we're going to finish tomorrow. So if you want to pull up those notes, you can. If you just want to listen to me first, that's fine, but then I do want you to write it down afterwards. So hold on one second. Okay. So the first thing that I went over in the notes is what a chromosome is, and we already discussed that. It's found in the nucleus, and it carries all of our genetic information in the form of a gene. No, not the genes we wear, but they are called genes, Genes. Now we also have alleles. Those are the little lines that I drew on the chromosome. Alleles are specific patterns in our genes found on a certain section of that chromosome. And our genes are where our traits are located. Our genes are passed from the parent to the offspring, which are the kiddos. From there, we're going to go over those words. There's a whole bunch of them on there. There are these words right here: homozygous, heterozygous, genotype, phenotype, purebred, hybrid, dominant allele, and recessive allele. So the first two words that I'm going to talk about is homozygous and heterozygous. These might not make sense right away, but they will when we start making that Punnett square in a little bit. So homozygous means that the letters in our Punnett squares are going to be the same. Either they're two capital letters or they're two lowercase letters. The letter is always the same, but we are talking about either capital or lowercase in this instance. So homozygous genotype could be two capital D's or two lowercase d's like this. Or they could be two capital Y's or two lowercase y's. But either way, each one of these is the same. Homo means same. Heterozygous, they're going to be different. So it would be like a capital B and a lowercase b. They're not the same. Or it could be a capital Y and a lowercase y. They're not both capital, they're not both lowercase, they're different. That's heterozygous when they're different. Your genotype are the letters. Those are the things I just wrote. When we talk about Punnett squares and when I ask you what the genotype is, that's what that letter combination is. The phenotype is the actual physical trait that comes from the genotype. So if you have curly hair, I can see that. That's a physical trait, that's your phenotype. If you're tall, people notice that. That's your phenotype. If you have blue eyes, if you have freckles, those are all your phenotypes. Those are the traits that we see. The genotype is those letters that are in the Punnett square that make up that trait in your body. Then we have two words, purebred and hybrid. Purebred is when the letters are the same, just like homozygous, both capital or both lower. Hybrid is when there's a mix, when they're different, so one capital and one lower. And then the last two words is a dominant allele and a recessive allele. When we talk about those letters, the capital letter is dominant. The recessive allele is lowercase. So in this genotype, this D is the dominant allele. It's a capital letter. The lowercase d is the recessive allele because it's lowercase. If I were to do it this way, both of those alleles are dominant. They're both capital letters. This would be homozygous dominant because they're the same. These two lower D's, these are both recessive alleles. They're both lowercase, so they're recessive. Hopefully this will start to make sense in a minute. So when we talk about Punnett squares, we make these to figure out the chance of having a certain trait based on what our parents have. So one second. Okay, this is a Punnett square. We are going to use the example of curly hair and straight hair. Look back at your notes. So if you need to pause this and print out those notes or write the notes down that I talked to you about, do that and then come back and hit play. We are going to say that the curly hair trait is dominant. We're going to use the letter C for this. It doesn't matter what letter we use, it's just a letter that represents it. So a capital C is going to mean curly hair. And it's the dominant trait because it's a capital letter. You can see that in your notes. The lowercase c is going to represent straight hair. We're going to say straight hair is recessive. It's not the dominant trait. Okay. In a Punnett square, the top we're going to say is where the male, the dad's traits will always go to make it consistent. And down the side is where we're going to put the mom's traits, her genotype. So for the dad in this case, we're going to say that dad has curly hair, and we're going to say he's homozygous dominant for it. So he's going to have two capital C's. We're going to say mom also has curly hair, but she is heterozygous for that. So instead of being homozygous, which means two of the same, two capital, since mom has curly hair and since she's heterozygous for it, we're going to put one capital C and one lowercase c. So now when we do the Punnett square, we're going to put those letters and we're going to combine them in each of these boxes. So for this first box, I'm taking this letter and this letter. So two capital C's go in the first box. Two capital C's go in the second box. A capital and a lowercase c go in the third box. And the capital and a lowercase c go in the fourth box. You completed your first Punnett square. Now we're going to take the information and talk about it. In this Punnett square, All 4 of these boxes have capital C's, which are dominant traits. So each one of these boxes represents a percentage of that trait. Since there's 4 boxes, each box is 25%. 25, 50, 75, 100. All 4 of these boxes have capital C's, like I said. So they're dominant traits. So that means you're going to have curly hair no matter what. 4 out of 4 of these have dominant traits. So 100% chance of you having curly hair. Now, if we change it a little bit, and let's leave this one the same. Let's say dad has curly hair too, but he's heterozygous just like mom. So now when we do it, we do 2 capital C's, capital lower, and 2 lowercase c's. 3 out of the 4 boxes have capital C's. So there's a 75% chance that you're going to have curly hair. But because of these 2 recessive alleles that your parents both had, there's a 25% chance that you're going to have straight hair. Now, we'll change it. I have to redraw my box. Now, dad's still going to have curly hair, but mom's going to have straight hair. Since mom has straight hair, she has no dominant allele, so that means both of hers are going to have little c's. Now when we do it, the numbers are going to be a little bit different. Capital lower, 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 capital lower, lower, lower. 2 of the boxes have capital letters, which are the dominant trait. So there's a 50% chance, 2 out of 4, there's a 50% chance that you'll have curly hair if your dad is heterozygous for curly hair and your mom is homozygous recessive for straight hair. And there's also a 50% chance that you're going to have straight hair because of this. Knowing this information, we then took out our SpongeBob genetics assignment. If you don't have a printer, you're going to have to write this on a sheet of paper. If you're confused about any of this, we're going to work a lot more with it over the next couple days, but if you won't be here, please reach out and message me on Schoology. If you need me to do a video conference with you, I can do that during school hours too, and I can set that up. Just let me know. Or if you just need me to call after school to help you out, I can do that. If you click on the Bikini Bottoms or SpongeBob genetics activity, this is what it looks like. So it says, scientists at Bikini Bottom have been investigating the genetic makeup of the organisms in this community. Use the information provided and your knowledge of genetics to answer each question. So the first question is all about the genotype, which is the letters of what we've been working with. The second question is about the phenotypes, the physical traits. The first question says, for each genotype below, indicate whether it's heterozygous or homozygous. Well, heterozygous means different, 1 capital, 1 lower, and homozygous means the same, homo meaning same. So either 2 capital or 2 lowercase. So the first one is capital T. The first one is capital T, capital T. They're both capital letters, so we're going to say that that one is homozygous because they're both the same. So we're saying HO. The next one is capital B, lowercase b. They're different. So that's heterozygous. HE. Going further, I'm going to skip a few, and there's one over here with 2 lowercase t's. They're both the same. They're both lowercase. So that one is homozygous. I'm going to have you finish that part on your own. Then we also worked on number 2 today, so I'm going to talk about that one really quickly. Number 2 says determine the phenotype for each genotype using the information provided about SpongeBob. So in number 2, it says the yellow body color is dominant to blue. So since yellow is dominant, capital Y represents yellow. Blue is recessive, So a lowercase y will represent blue. And this question is asking, if SpongeBob ended up with these genotypes, what body color would he be based on that? The first one is capital Y, capital Y. Since those are both dominant alleles, he is going to end up having a yellow body color because the yellow body color is dominant. In the second one, there's a capital Y and a lowercase y. So there's a dominant allele and a recessive allele, but the dominant allele always takes over because it's dominant. So if there's a dominant allele anywhere in the genotype, it's going to end up taking over that trait. So he's going to end up being yellow. And then the last one on number 2 in the first part is 2 lowercase y's. Those are both recessive. So he's going to end up being blue in that case because lowercase y represented blue. I'm going to have you do this part on your own. Look back at this one if you need help. Number 3, we get to see the phenotypes. So now we have to give the genotypes, the letters like we did up here, that are possible for Patrick in this instance. So the first part, it says a tall head, capital T, is dominant to the short head, which is a lowercase t. So if Patrick ended up having a tall head, what are the 2 possible genotypes that he could have had to have that tall head? Well, tall is dominant, so we need a capital T in there somewhere. So there's 2 ways that we can do this. His genotype could either be 2 capital T's, or it could be a capital T and a lowercase t. And if he ended up having a short head, there's only one genotype that it could be. And it's 2 lowercase t's. I'll have you do the bottom one on your own for that. I'm going to walk you through this first Punnett square, and then I'm having them tomorrow do the rest of them on their own. So number 4 says SpongeBob SquarePants recently met Sponge Susie Roundpants at a dance. SpongeBob is heterozygous for his square shape, but Sponge Susie is round. Create a Punnett square to show the possibilities that would result if SpongeBob and Sponge Susie had children. And then it says, hint, read question 2. So since SpongeBob is heterozygous for his square body, that means that the square is the dominant trait. So we're going to use an S for this. It can be any letter. So the top is going to be SpongeBob because the male's on top for these. So capital S, lowercase s. The reason why he has a capital and a lowercase here is because he's heterozygous for this trait. So heterozygous means different. If he was homozygous for it, it'd be 2 capital S's. But it's heterozygous, so they're different. Capital, lower. Now, Sponge Susie is round. So since she is round, she has the recessive trait. That means her genotype, it has to be 2 lowercase s's. So now when we do these together, we're going to put this one and this one right here, this one and this one right here. So capital S, lowercase s, capital S, lowercase, capital, lowercase, lowercase, lowercase. A says list the possible genotypes and phenotypes for their children. So 3 of them are the same genotype, capital S, lowercase s, and one of them is 2 lowercase s's. So SS and SS. And the possible phenotypes, there's a 75%, well, just kidding, I'll stop. That's the next part. So the possible phenotypes is round or square. Now the next part says, what are the chances of a child with a square shape? Well, square is the dominant trait. Those are the capital S's. 3 of the boxes have capital S's in them. So 3 out of 4 chances for a square shape, which ends up being 75%. What are the chances of a child with a round shape? 1 out of 4, which is a 25% chance. That's all we did today. That's a lot, actually. That's a lot of what we did today. So I want you on your own to fill this out. If you don't have a printer, that's fine. All you really need is to say number one. You can just write these down in order just like that. When you get down here, all you have to do is draw your own box and then just write the answers to the side. Just make sure you're labeling your paper, and I can check when you get back. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. We're going to be doing this for the next couple days, and then we will start a new activity on Tuesday that I will post for those who are gone. Thanks.